Hey, my name is Ori, and welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to focus on a question, seahorse care and how to care for seahorses. So I want to just basically go into the basic information about seahorse care, kind of go through a little bit of details about how I keep them, the recommended, and then also what you can do to increase your odds. So first, let's start with the first question. So you want to get some seahorses. What kind of size aquarium you need. So a 30 gallon is what you'll typically hear people say per pair. To me, that's a little small, but the recommended bare minimum size is a 30 gallon aquarium for a pair of captive bred seahorses. They also say that an additional 15 gallons is recommended for every additional pair of seahorses. The thing about that is that's very small. So seahorses, a lot of people think that seahorses kind of just like to sit, and they do. You can see they sit around a lot, but and you can see in this footage they kind of hang out in the single area, but they do explore. You'll notice as the footage goes on, they like to explore. They use this entire aquarium. I only have 2 seahorses in here. It's a 90 gallon system, but it's a 75 gallon display, and I've only got 2 seahorses in here. And they're always in different spots. They use the entire aquarium, so I would recommend go as large as possible. Get as big as you can. Length is still a lot of used to. People would say you needed vertical tanks, right? You wanted vertical tanks, but it's not what it's all about. It's not about just up and down movement with seahorses. They still move left to right. They do a lot of movement left to right. They do move vertical too, but they also move left to right. So it's not all about vertical. It's also about horizontal. So a tall tank with a nice horizontal stretch lengthwise would be good. So as big as you can get, honestly. Like I said, the minimum is 30. I would do bigger. I would say the minimum is probably 50 for a pair, and kind of go from there with about an additional 20 gallons per each pair that you add onto that, because the 50 is a good base start. The temperature, so you'll find some information on temperature. So one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to keep your seahorses at the same temperature you keep your reef tank at. That's the big thing. Seahorses want to be in the 68 to 74 Fahrenheit range. You want to keep them cold. I don't even use a heater on my system, so I've just got a chiller. I've got a 1/4 horsepower chiller, and then I've got the Apex hooked in so that should the temperature rise above 72 degrees, it does turn on an evaporation fan. So that's to keep my temperature always at 68, 68.5, and it stays at that pretty evenly. So yeah, you don't want warmer temperatures. I know I've heard arguments in the past. Well, seahorses are tropical and they can handle up to 78 in the wild, but there's I'm telling you, you will not have success in this with seahorses keeping them at 78. They're cooking at that temperature. Even in the wild, if they may be at that, you want to keep your temperatures down low. So you want to have a reef tank and then your seahorse tank. The next thing I want to focus on is feeding. So seahorses need to be fed about 2 to 3 times per day. You can do mysis. I do a mix. I do mysis, and then I get this pack of copepods and amphipods that are frozen. So I do a mix between both of those. I put 2 cubes in, and with the remainder I just throw in my reef tank. But they do really well on that. Mysis is a great start. Typically with the captive bred, you're gonna start them on mysis. So PE mysis is really good. Hikuri BioPure mysis shrimp is really good. Both of those are really good. Brine shrimp is probably one of the more popular things that gets fed to seahorses. Now, if you want to enrich the brine or something, then it can be fine. Brine's not really the go-to here. It's probably one of the more common ones used, but you're going to be much better off with mysis. Brine doesn't have as much nutrition unless it's still got the yolk in it, so you can actually run a hatchery, and that would be fine, but they're so tiny. Depends on what type of seahorse you have. If you can feed them, if you can get them to eat freshly hatched brine, that would be very healthy though. Next thing I want to talk about is equipment. So the bare minimum equipment, you're going to need a skimmer. You got to keep the organics down. So the bare minimum, you're going to have a skimmer. You want to do 10 to 25% water changes every week. Purging is a great way to keep organics down. You can take Purging, throw it in a 150 micron bag, put it in your sump, and it's a great way to help keep organics down on top of a skimmer. I wouldn't run it without a skimmer, but running Seachem's Purging product is really good. A Refugium helps. So I've got a Refugium on my tank. I've got a Refugium that's got Kato in it. It's also got some Red Ugu. And I believe there is some sea lettuce. There is some sea lettuce in there too. So some ova. So I've got a nice size Refugium too that I use to help keep organics down. Refugium really does go a long way. Seahorses like macroalgae anyway, so you can put really beautiful macroalgae in your display, and then also you can keep like a sea lettuce or a Kato or something in your sump in a Refugium. Then I have a UV. I have a 40-watt UV that I run. And I do a slow flow through that. You can look at, when you get a UV, you need to make sure you check the flow of the UV, because you don't want to pump on the higher side. So when you set up your UV, and I can go into more details in this in another video, you want to make sure you're doing the slow for killing, not only killing algae but also killing like pests. It's not going to get all pests, but it can get a few things. So you want to slow flow as possible, and whatever the slowest flow that UV can handle, that's probably what you want to put it at. The next thing that I have on my tank is so I got the Refugium, the skimmer, the UV, and then let's talk about flow. So back a lot of people think that seahorses need really low flow, and today's captive bred seahorses are actually a lot healthier than they used to be when they were wild caught. So your flow still, although still low, 10 to 20 turnovers is about what you're looking for, and they can handle a little bit of flow. So I actually have on my 75, I have a Neuro 3 on the right side, and I run that pretty much on just let it do its own little programmatic schedule. And then I also have a little Higer designed for a 25 gallon on the left side of the tank. And I let those flow pretty much 24/7. The only time that the flow actually turns down a little bit is during feeding. I have the app on the Neuro 3 does allow me to turn the pump off during feeding time. So I do have that scheduled for about an hour, about times that I feed, a couple hours a day. It does turn down the flow a little bit. So that's pretty much covers most of it. The last thing that I want to talk about is just your water parameters. And I'll put some basic parameters up here on the screen that you can look at. And this is kind of what you want to keep everything in the recommended range. Yeah, so I'll just leave these up for a little bit. But that's pretty much the Seahorse Care. I'm going to do some more videos depending on how these do. And hopefully I can go into a little bit more details even than this. And do a little bit more content out there. All right, you guys have a good day. Thank you. Bye.